Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at EX3, and EX3 offers us lots of new and powerful tools to build and iterate on some new and existing decks. And today's deck I'm going to be taking a look at is going to be the brand new Examon deck. So Examon is going to be one of the more competitively viable decks to come out of this set, and well, it's just a really solid single stack deck that's going to ideally want you to build all the way up into your Examon, and then have your Examon be supported with one of your other level 6s, and you're going to use the combination of those two to try to control the opponent's field, limit some of their actions, and to chip them all at the same time. So, onto the deck profile. Starting off with the Digitama, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Bebydomon. So, this is the BT10 version of Bebydomon, and we're mostly just utilizing this card just because we do actually care about the name of our Digitama because of one of our rookies that we're running in the deck requiring Bebydomons. Then, on top of that, this Bebydomon I'm preferring over the brand new one that came out in the set is because, well, this is offering us some card draw for the opponent literally having Digimon in play, which is something that they're going to do, especially in this control style of deck that tries to stop some of the opponent's attacks and actions. Then, as far as the other Digitama, I'm going to be running 2 copies of the brand new EX3 version of Bebydomon, just because, again, Bebydomon by name does matter for the deck, on top of the fact that this version of Bebydomon offers our high-level Digimon a nice DP boost. Next, on to the rookies, I'm going to be running 3 copies of ModokiBetamon. So ModokiBetamon is just going to be the rookie floodgate, and it's going to be a floodgate for the opponent's memory manipulating shenanigans, stopping them from gaining any kind of memory except by their tamers. So this is really good, especially now, just because there's still a lot of heavy use on memory manipulation, especially with memory boosts, so ModokiBetamon just shutting that out could just be super oppressive. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Dracomon. So this is the starter deck version of Dracomon, and he's in the deck for 2 big reasons. One, he's a consistency tool to try to dig out our parts and pieces because we are playing with a lot of Dramons, and then the second is his name actually does matter to try to make our evolutions as cheap and efficient as we can possibly make them. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 4 copies of the brand new Dracomon. So this EX3 version of Dracomon is going to be another searcher and consistency tool for the deck, on top of the fact that we do need the Bebydomons specifically in our eggs, just because he requires Bebydomon in order to digivolve him as cheaply and efficiently as we possibly can. And on top of that, he even has a nice inheritable ability to give our higher stage Digimon a nice boost, so that way we could try to use them as best as we possibly can, either offensively or defensively. Next, on to the level 4s, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Kumamon. So Kumamon is in the deck just for that hybrid win factor, and that's pretty much the only intended use of this card, is just to be that alternative win condition. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Coredramon. So this is one of the brand new Coredramons in EX3, and this is just a pretty decent card, offering some solid defensive capabilities for being able to protect our Digimon. So he evolves for 2 on top of a Dracomon, which is why Dracomon is pretty important as the main rookie we want to be seeing. Otherwise, we're going to be digivolving for 3, which is a little bit more expensive than he normally would be. But he comes with the evade ability himself built in, so he's the type of card that we also just don't mind sitting on the field, just because he has the ability to dodge the opponent's removal, where if this Digimon would be deleted, we could just suspend him to prevent that deletion. Whether it's a deletion by card effect like the opponent's Gaia Force, or the opponent just attacking into an unsuspended Digimon, it'll prevent it from being deleted by combat as well, just makes it a super valuable card to just stick around on the field, so that way we could try to build our stack and still have a Digimon around. Then the inheritable ability is he's giving our Examon and other Dramons the evade ability to also make them super sticky and annoying for the opponent to deal with. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Coredramon. So this is the All-Force Bebydomon starter deck version of Coredramon, and this Coredramon is really good, well, because we actually do care about the Coredramon name. He's already fitting on color with the deck already, and he is a decent security threat where he has the security ability to pop himself out after the security battle, and that allows us to then trigger his on-play ability to draw some extra cards for even more consistency. Just makes him a really decent extra Coredramon for us to use. And then the last level 4 of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Coredramon. So there's 2 Coredramons that released in EX3, and this is the secondary one, where it's doing something very similar to the blue one, just trying to support our higher stage Digimon. So he digivolves for 2 like the other one on top of our Dracomons for easy evolutions, on top of the fact that he natively has the blocker ability, so that way we have some good early game blocking potential, on top of the fact that he's going to give our Dramons and Examon the blocker ability, so that way they can be blockers as well. Next, on to the level 5s, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Wingdramon. So this is the EX3 version of Wingdramon, and it's doing something very similar to the EX3 Blue Coredramon that we just saw, where he has the alternative Digivolution cost that's allowing us to digivolve him more efficiently on top of our Coredramons, just like how we want to evolve off of our Dracomons. And then on top of that, he has the evade ability built into him, and he's going to have the inheritable ability of giving our Dramons and Examon evade. So he's just allowing us to want to digivolve it in alternate colors. So we want to build a stack where we're utilizing the green Coredramon to go into our Wingdramon to then go into our level 6 or 7. And what's allowing us to be able to go into our level 7 is the fact that Examon can use him as a level 6 for his DNA Digivolution. So we have an easier way to be able to get up into our Examon utilizing our level 5s as well as our level 6s. Then he has the end of turn ability to allow us to then DNA, so that way we have easy ways to be able to line up our DNA Digivolutions thanks to this ability. And then the last level 5 of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Groundramon. So Groundramon is basically in the deck for all of the exact same reasons that I just laid out with our Wingdramon, except instead of having and giving the evade ability, he's going to have and give the blocker ability, but he's still important for the deck just to allow us to DNA into our Examon as best as we possibly can, utilizing him as another material for us to use for that DNA Digivolution, with the end of turn ability to again just allow us to be able to DNA, making it easier to go up into our level 7. Next, on to the level 6s, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Slayerdramon. So I do find Slayerdramon to be pretty important for the deck just because he's what's going to help us control and manipulate some of the opponent's actions. So he has the alternative Digivolution cost where he could Digivolve on top of our Wingdramon or Groundramon for 3. So again, just trying to make it Digivolution as cheap and efficient as we possibly can is something that the deck is already doing with all of these name-based synergies. Then on top of that, he has the all turns ability where once per turn, when this Digimon becomes suspended, we get to unsuspend him. So whether that's him blocking during the opponent's turn or us attacking during our turn, just the fact that we have this utility just allows us to easily be very aggressively defensive depending on how our stacks line up and what the field currently looks like. Then he also has this ability where it basically just tries to goad the opponent's Digimon into attacking, where we get to suspend one of our Dramons or Examon to force one of the opponent's Digimon to attack. So this is just super powerful because before they do anything, after they raise, we use Slayerdramon's ability to suspend himself, then he uses his own ability to unsuspend himself, and then forces one of the opponent's Digimon to attack then and there, and ideally we're going to have either blocker in our stack or an Examon with blocker in its stack, ready to be able to stop the opponent's attack and to delete their Digimon, allowing us to be able to try to control the opponent's field a little bit easier. And he even has the inheritable ability to basically just pass along his goading type of ability onto our level 7. And then the last level 6 of the deck is going to be 3 copies of Breakdramon. So Breakdramon is like a Slayerdramon, allowing us to evolve off of our name-based synergies for a slightly reduced cost. And this is the card that's actually going to be allowing us to deal some really good consistent chip damage, rewarding us for basically blocking the opponent's attack that we then just forced. So he has the All Turns ability himself to be able to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon. So we get to not only just suspend our Digimon with our Examon, but we also get to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon, limiting what they can then do during their turn. On top of the fact that during all turns, when our higher stage Digimon deletes an opponent's Digimon, then we get to trash the top card of their security. So whether we're forcing them to attack into us, and then we block and then delete the Digimon that way, we're going to be then burning the opponent's security. Or if we're attacking into the opponent's suspended Digimon, then we get to burn a security again that way as well. That just creates the opportunity for us to not always need to swing into the opponent's security, putting our Digimon at risk, while still being able to deal some decent damage. And then his inheritable ability is going to allow us to pass along that burn type of ability onto our level 7. And speaking of our level 7, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Examon. So Examon is an absolutely insane Digimon to sit on the field just because of all of the different abilities, not only just what we're giving him, but when we DNA, we could create a very powerful board presence basically out of nowhere. So he has the DNA Digivolution, where we could Digivolve for 0 on top of a green level 6 and a blue level 6, but again, we could use our level 5s as substitutions for those level 6s, so we could line up easy DNA plays utilizing our level 5s. Then on top of that, the reward for DNAing is that we get to place a Dramon from our hands to the bottom of his Digivolution source, and then if we DNA'd, we get to play a Dramon with 12,000 or less DP from our hand for free. So ideally, we're going to be putting one level 6 underneath him to gain one of their effects, and then we're going to have the other level 6 just sit on our field, so that way we could try to take advantage of both of their passive and active abilities that they're not only just going to have themselves, but give to our Examon. And then on top of that, he has the same type of ability that we just saw with our Slayerdramon, where when he suspends himself, we get to unsuspend himself. So that just allows us to, again, use him offensively or defensively, depending on what the situation is. Next, on to the Tamers, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Davis. So Davis is not only going to be the memory setter for the deck, so that way we could try to make our plays as efficient as we possibly can, but he's also going to allow us to try to dig through our deck in order to find our parts and pieces, acting as another consistency tool for literally just playing him, and the fact that we're already in blue and green just means we have an even higher chance of success of being able to go 2-for-1 off of Davis. And then the last tamer of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Mimi and Joe. So Mimi and Joe not only is already fitting on theme with how the deck wants to play, interacting with the fact that we could gain some extra memory for us having a suspended Digimon and the opponent having a suspended Digimon, which we easily can set up ourselves, but the fact that it's on color as well, being another blue and green tamer, is also super nice, and the advantage of using Mimi and Joe versus Ken and Davis, even though Ken and Davis is easier to gain that extra memory, is the fact that we can't really utilize Ken and Davis's secondary ability, where we actually can utilize Mimi and Joe's secondary ability to allow us to gain some extra card draw. Next, on to the options, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Ice Wall because this card is still just that good at being a defensive card to shut off the opponent's ability to want to attack, and this is extra devastating in this style of deck just because we could force the opponent's Digimon to attack, making them auto lose that 2 memory, on top of it being another decent security threat to try to anti-tempo the opponent. Next, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Giga Death. So Giga Death is to try to help the fact that the deck does have a little bit of a hard time dealing with wide boards. So if they do have a wide board and all of their Digimon are suspended, then this is just a good card to clean all of those up. This also has the ability to be able to suspend a Digimon itself, so at worst it's still just going to be able to get rid of 1 target, but the ideal situation is utilizing this to just kind of pseudo board wipe the opponent, whether it's coming from our hand or our security. And then the last option of the deck is going to be 3 copies of Megadeath. So Megadeath is still just one of the best single target removal cards that we have, and it still has some pretty decent flexibility, allowing us to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon and bounce a suspended Digimon, so it doesn't necessarily have to be all on one Digimon, but most of the time it probably is. And this is just an absolutely fantastic security threat, again, being able to just get rid of the opponent's Digimon from the field. So as far as just the general gameplay and game plan of the deck, we're obviously going to want to start off by digivolving and raising into our Dracomon. Ideally, it's going to be the new one because he actually has an inheritable ability. And then we're going to go from our Dracomon into either our blue or green Coredramons. So if we are going to go into our green Coredramon, then we don't necessarily want to move it out right away just because it doesn't have any protection. And we're going to want to then digivolve it into our Wingdramon in order to give the evasion ability and have a blocker, so that way we have some form of protection while we're waiting for our other pieces to be able to line up our DNA Digivolution play. But if we are going to go into our blue Coredramon, then we could raise out a little bit early just because he natively has that evasion ability, and then we want to digivolve into our green Groundramon, so that way we again set up that evade blocker to then be able to try to wait on that Digimon and find our other pieces to line up our DNA Digivolution plays, just because we don't need to go all the way up into our level 6 to be able to utilize them, and we actually want to play them for free off of our Examon. But it doesn't necessarily matter which order you go into as long as you're just alternating your colors, so that way you could try to maximize it on the abilities that you're trying to gain off of your Digimon. Then when we do go into our Examon through DNA Digivolution off of our level 5s, so even if you do have to hard play a level 5, sometimes that's not necessarily the worst thing in the world, just because of the value that we're going to be getting off of our Examon, being able to not only shove one of our level 6s underneath, but be able to hard play another level 6 as well, and ideally we could do this as early as like turn 2 or 3, depending on how much memory and the setup that the opponent is giving us. But regardless of that, the idea is just to be able to get up into our Examon and then have these two abilities to pair up with it to be able to try to goad the opponent's Digimon into attacking and force those attacks at the start of their turn, so it really limits what they could possibly do and how they could possibly play, unless they feel like wanting to lose their Digimon for free to your Examon, which ideally would have blocker. We then would be able to burn the opponent's security for free, so it forms a really interesting loop on trying to control and burn the opponent's security, on top of the fact that Examon does have the ability to unsuspend himself to be able to utilize him in various different ways, again, depending on the matchup, board state, and setup. But ideally, I just found that going into Slayerdramon more often than not is usually the best idea, just because he can multi-attack himself, so if we do just casually burn the opponent's security, then we do have the ability to just start swinging and going ham when we feel like we need to put on the pressure, just because Examon has that same style of ability where we get to unsuspend himself as well, so that's just a lot of attacks all at once. And again, the deck's big weakness is against wide fields, just because the wider the field, the more options and opportunities the opponent has to try to take advantage of the fact that we do only have a limited number of ways to stop and stave off some of that aggression, and they do get more possible targets to pick from when they're going to be losing their Digimon to our goading type of abilities. But for the most part, the whole core game plan of the deck is just to be able to DNA as effectively into our Examon, line up a blocker and evade on our Examon, and be able to alternate between whatever level 6 that we need, depending on the situation that emerges. And then as far as other tech and tools go, the deck still has room for customization and flexibility depending on what you want to try to gain out of the deck and how you want to play the deck. So we are running 2-color cards, so that does open us up to be able to use some various other searchers like the BT8-Vmon to help find our 2-color cards. On top of the fact that we do have the Vmons that reward us for unsuspending, so we could run the EX1 Vmon to gain us some memory when we unsuspend, or we could run the BT2 Vmon to draw us a card again when we unsuspend. Then we do have some other cute rookies to think about utilizing. I'm going to be highlighting the promo Bluekamon for whenever we do decide to get it, because it is just a good rookie to use, not only just helping us with some extra card draw, but to being able to have easy access at a rookie. But you could easily just run another Floodgate if you really feel like you just want to try to stop and limit some of the opponent's actions. And speaking of stopping and limiting some of the opponent's actions, I'm going to be suggesting the possibility you could run Sorai and Innocent Blizzard as a way to be able to help deal with wide boards. You're not exactly dealing with them, you're kind of just stalling them out, but being able to stall them out is still better than not being able to deal with them at all. Then we do have some other options we could think about utilizing for some extra utility. So we do have Hammer Spark for that instant tempo, on top of the fact that we have a slew of different memory boosts to not only gain what its main ability is, but to set up its delay ability to gain it to memory to be able to make more powerful plays later. Then we do have cards like Tidal Wave and Kaiser Nail to be able to split apart our stacks, because sometimes we do have these really awkward stacks where we have inheritable abilities that just aren't doing anything, or a Digimon we just want to separate and have on the field. So Tidal Wave and Kaiser Nail both try to help separate our stacks. Then if we're trying to Digivolve even more efficiently, we do have a card like Digivolution Plugin S to help us not only just draw a card, but to be able to Digivolve cleanly into our higher stage Digimon, and this does work with alternative Digivolution costs, counting as that 3 to be able to Digivolve for essentially 2. And its security ability also is just pretty decent, adding some extra consistency into the deck. But if you want to go for something a little bit more situational, then we do have Hidden Potential Discovered. I don't like the fact that we do have to Digivolve off of specifically a green Digimon, which a lot of our Digimon aren't 2 colors, so it doesn't necessarily mean that this card's going to be online all the time, but it's just a good way to suspend our Digimon, gain some benefits for suspending our Digimon, and then if we're using Slayerdramon or Examon, then they'll at least be able to unsuspend themselves, so it's not like it's that big of a drawback. And for a similar style of reasoning, you could also think about running Samdasanti, just because, again, our Digimon can unsuspend themselves if we're using it on the correct Digimon, and having a cheap way to suspend the opponent's Digimon to then be able to beat them up is pretty good, on top of the fact that we could also suspend Tamers with this, and if this card isn't coming out of our security, then the Digimon or Tamer basically stays stun-locked for a turn, so that way we have the availability to be able to beat it up and delete it later. But if the goal is to try to beat up the opponent's Digimon, then we do have some really good boost options to think about using. So we could use Forbidden Trident for some low-level removal, or we could think about using Hell's Masquerade, just because it'll allow us to gain piercing and to take advantage of the fact that we're already trying to play a blue and green deck. And then we also have Avalon's Gate, which isn't the best card, but it's not the worst card either, having its own set of utility. Then, as I mentioned before, for other Tamers, we do have Davis and Ken for some easy memory generation, just because we're already playing with blue and green Digimon. We still have access at the BT1 version of Mimi, just to try to help turbo our raising and be able to make more aggressive lines of play. And then we do have some other tech tamers that we could think about incorporating depending on what you think is going to be most beneficial. So I think for this style of deck, having Takumi Aiba is really good, just because we're not actually aggressing with our low-level Digimon. We're just using him for some extra card draw, just to try to make the deck as consistent as we possibly can to be able to find the right pieces, because we do want to Digivolve in a very particular way. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are a couple of different ways you could support me and the channel. So I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so when you use that link to buy cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will go to supporting me and the channel. I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so when you buy a playmat with my design, then some of that money will also go to help supporting me and the channel. And on top of all of that, I do have a Twitch account over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so giving me a follow and a subscription also helps support me there, and I do play Digimon on top of various other games on that platform as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.